We will be starting a series at some point here, probably in October. We're still discerning exactly what God is asking us to do in all of that. We'll be looking at a book of the Bible. And so I sometimes feel a little bit of like, hey, God, we don't have a series started already. What do we do? Like, what's the next thing? About 2 weeks ago, I was sitting around, and then God just said, Balaam's donkey. All right, he said, Balaam's donkey. And I thought, okay. But when he says these things, I was talking to my kids about it this week, like, what do you do? Where do you start with this message thing? And he said it, and I pay attention to it. I'm like, I think I'm supposed to preach about Balaam's donkey. And then last week, Pastor Littlejohn gets up, and he starts reading through Jude, and he gets to Balaam. And I'm like, there's not a lot of Balaam in the Bible. Either Pastor Littlejohn is stealing or God is trying to get to something. And I choose to believe God's trying to get to something. If you haven't had a chance yet, I would really encourage you to go back and listen to Pastor Littlejohn's message. I believe it's the foundation for this, because I'm not going to spend a lot of time in all the pieces today. I'm really going to try to just give you the big picture of something. It really isn't even a lot about the donkey today. And it would serve you well to just sit back and watch what Pastor Littlejohn spoke on last week. It's a better sermon than this one, anyways. All right, just tell you that right now. All right, but today I'm gonna preach on something, and it's called Balaam, Go Home. Balaam, go home. All right, and I know that sometimes it's hard for us. We like to put ourselves in the position of God's people when we read the Bible, but I like us to maybe see ourselves as Balaam today, okay? And I'm going to read a lot, okay? That's another thing Pastor Littlejohn taught me last week. I can just read the whole thing. So here we go. We're going to start in Numbers 22, your favorite book of the Bible, right next to Leviticus, as the number one skipped books in the Bible. But Numbers 22, starting in verse 2, and we're going to read a lot of chapter 22 today. It says, Now Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that it... Wait a second, stop for a moment. Can you go back to my title slide for a minute? Isn't he cute? All right. He is something else, that little donkey. All right, now let's get back to the stuff here. Now Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites, which, by the way, they destroyed them. Okay, so Moab was in great fear because of the people, for they were numerous, and Moab was in dread of the sons of Israel. Moab said to the elders of Midian, Now this horde will eat up all that is around us, as the ox eats up the grass of the field. And Balak, the son of Zippor, was king of Moab at the time. So he sent messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor, at Pethor, which is near the Euphrates River, in the land of the sons of his people, to call for him, saying, Behold, a people came out of Egypt. Behold, they have covered the surface of the land, and they are living opposite me. Now therefore, please come, curse this people for me, since they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I will be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed. Whew. Okay, this is a big honor. It's a big honor, by the way. Balaam is not a Midianite. He's not a Moabite. He is from a different family, from a different place. He's well known, obviously. And this is like, this king is saying, Balaam, you're all powerful, is he not? He's saying it. He's really, my kids say he's really glazing Balaam here, right? Whoever you bless is blessed. Whoever you curse is cursed, right? He's like, you are, it's like, feels like this whole thing feels a little bit Lord of the Ringy. You know what I mean? Like, the Moborks. We can call them the Moborks. Moborks call out to Balaam the Gray, please come curse, with your wizardry, all of these people who are coming on the land, right? And so it gets this idea. But you need to understand, this is them calling Balaam something very special, right? They're really honoring him. They're really calling him to a place. And we'll see here, all right, a little bit more as we go. So let's just skip to verse 8. It says, And he said to them, all right, so they send these people to Balaam and they glaze him, right? And then Balaam says, give me a minute, let me check. So he says to them, spend the night here. I'll bring word back to you just as the Lord may speak to me. Now, this is important here. The word Lord is Yahweh. It is written in this narrative by the historian saying that he said, I'll go check with Yahweh. It's also important to understand that Balaam wasn't an Israelite and he was not a worshiper of Yahweh. But he knows enough to ask the one who drove out the Amorites, I'll ask him, not some other god like Baal. Okay? So, and the leaders of Moab stayed with Balaam. Now, watch this. Then God came to Balaam and said, who are these men with you? Because, he's just in conversation. God knows who they are. And Balaam said to God, Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, sent word to me, behold, there is a people who came out of Egypt, and they cover the surface of the land. Now come, curse them for me. Perhaps I'll be able to fight against them and drive them out. But God said to Balaam, do not go with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed. So Balaam got up in the morning and said to Balak's representatives, go back to your land, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you. Okay, so we note a couple of things here just because it's important. All right, Balak sends for Balaam, and Balaam is like a free agent. He's like a cursing mercenary, all right? And he's like, yo, I'll go check with Yahweh because Yahweh sent these people out, and I got to, he wants to keep his reputation. I want you to understand that there's more going on here than just on the surface, all right? And so he goes to Yahweh, and Yahweh, God says, no, do not go with them. Now, it's important for us to start here and for us to make something very clear. This is God's perfect will for Balaam. Do not go. By the way, the cursing would have been a pointless exercise anyways, okay? And it would actually backfire on Balaam, and it would make him look bad. Because if he went to curse Israel, which he would not be able to do because God had already blessed them. So you can say the words, you can do all of that, you can dance around. Elijah's going to show us with the prophets of Baal, you can cut yourselves and you can yell, but you're going to look foolish. So it wouldn't have worked. All it's going to do, all right, for Balaam to go there is to put him in a position where the enemy of God's people, which is the enemy of God, would have access to him. Understand what I'm saying? The only thing that happens by Balaam going is him doing something that he shouldn't do because he ends up hanging out with the people he shouldn't hang out with. Okay. But let's also recognize something. Balaam hears from God. Okay? And he is a legitimate prophet, by the way. The Palestinian ancient literature has him written in it. And it is noted how many things he blessed and cursed, and those things came to pass. Okay? Now, this is important because I want us to see something. This isn't someone who is a dedicated follower of God. Okay? He's a bit of a free agent. And yet he hears from God. So I want you to start hearing some of these things because sometimes I think we get a little bit confused. We think, well, somebody heard from God, they must be a prophet of God. But Balaam isn't. Okay? It's important. But I also want us to recognize some things that are going on with Balaam that those of us who call God God sometimes really miss. This was his job. It's what he did. Do you understand what I'm saying? Someone calls, they give you the right amount of money, right? And we think it's like this is weird because we don't have a lot of this happening in Canada where we send out for somebody to curse somebody. Other parts of the world, they got that happening, right? For the right price, that's what you come and do. But he doesn't just go do his job. I want you to hear this. He stops and asks whether or not he should go do his job. Do you hear what I'm saying? How many of us just think, well, this is a gift that God's given me. This is a job that I have. This is a school that I go to. Somebody asked me to come in and do this. You just go. But look how he stops, and he asked whether he should go and do his job, whether he should use his gifting in that space. He stops and asks that. And this is important because then he understands, he knows, he hears God's perfect will. A lot of us don't even know that we're outside of God's perfect will because we never asked him what it was. And this is important for us to note because as I have learned in my life, ignorance is no excuse for the law. You can go pretend all you want that you didn't know God didn't want you to go, but you didn't ask. Young people, hear me today. Now is the time to ask, what direction am I supposed to go in, Lord? Now is the time to ask what his perfect will is. Now is the time to avoid hanging out in the spaces that would bring great failure to your life. So let's keep reading through this. This is what happens. These people go back to Balak and they say, listen, Balaam ain't coming. And sometimes I'm afraid I'm going to get all the names wrong because they all have the same syllables, So Balak says, hey, man, we cannot have this. We need to have the cursor of all cursors. Like, if we don't have him, we're in trouble. Go back and get. So he sends even a more important contingent to Balaam and says, go get him, right? This is like they're whining, dining. Not a lot of us don't maybe follow sports, but that's why I keep saying free agent. This is basically what they're doing. Like, listen, we can give you a bigger contract than God, right? We got more honor for you, more glory for you. We got more good for you, and all you got to do is do what you do, right? Just be the best you can be. And so they go back to him. And they come, this new contingent, come to Balaam and say to him, this is what Balak the son of Zippor says. I beg you, let nothing keep you from coming to me, for I will indeed honor you richly, and I will do whatever you tell me. This is important because he's using language that God is going to use towards Balaam. God is going to say to Balaam, only do what I tell you. And listen to this, very important. It's important that you see the contrast here. Balak is saying to Balaam, I'll do whatever. Do you understand? Over and over again, the idea is Balak saying to Balaam, I'll make you more important than God. Do you hear it? I'll honor you. Please come then, curse this people for me. Now Balaam, he replies, and this is the thing about Balaam, man. He's good. He's like, this is the thing, man. He makes you feel like he's got all the right answers. He's got all the right things to say. He's got a lot of things that I think we would say, right? He says, even if Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not do anything, either small or great, contrary to the command of the Lord my God. Now, please. Now, if it just ended there, this is where it was supposed to end, by the way. I could do nothing contrary to the command of my God. The command of my God was no. And then he says, however, in my spiritual ease, now please, you stay just like the last one here tonight. I'll find out what else the Lord will say to me. Because no's not clear. Because no leaves too much open for interpretation. I mean, what kind of no did he mean? Did he mean kind of no, or did he mean like sort of no? Or did he mean no yesterday, but he means yes today? I mean, I got to find out what kind of no this is, because in my heart, I want to go. See, we're reading a narrator. We're going to learn more and more about Balaam's heart. But we're reading a narrator. If Balaam was really God's and his whole plan was to walk in God's perfect will, he would have said, hey, don't let the door hit you on the way out. No means no. So God comes to Balaam at night and says to him, if the men have come to call you, rise and go with them, but you shall do only the thing that I tell you. God says to him, only do what I tell you to do. Okay? So Balaam arose in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the leaders of Moab. Now, I want you to think about what's happening here, because at first glance, it feels a little confusing. But just stay in that confusion for a moment, because it's like God said no, now he says yes. What's going on? Okay, we'll keep reading. Because we understand that while God is saying yes, he's not really saying yes. Because we get to verse 22, and that's what it says. It says, but God was angry. Now it feels like God's petty, kind of, right? No, yes, no, yes. What is it, God? This is why when you read the Bible, you've got to read the Bible. Because there should be some verses going off in your head right now going, what? This doesn't make sense based on God's character if I'm reading it a certain way, right? But God was angry that he was going. And the angel of the Lord took his stand in the road as an adversary against him. Now he was riding on his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn in his hand, the donkey turned off from the road and went into the field. The donkey's like, no way, we're not going. And Balaam struck the donkey to guide her back onto the road. Balaam is like, we're going. Do you understand? You've seen the contrast. The dumb donkey's saying, you are not going against God. And Balaam is saying, we're going. It says, then the angel of the Lord stood in the narrow path of the vineyards with a stone wall on this side and on that. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pressed herself against the wall and pressed Balaam's foot against the wall, so he struck her again. I can see it. Can you see it? Dumb donkey! Then the angel of the Lord went farther and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn to the left or to the right. So watch this. A lot of times, it happens in threes, even when you write about, tried it, nothing. Donkey, tried it, nothing. Tried it, down, God's like, When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam. So now Balaam's really mad, all right? And he strikes the donkey with his staff. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey. Okay. He opened the mouth of the donkey. Now, this is someone who has heard from God, yes? Does God need to use a donkey to speak to Balaam? From the context of understanding. Obviously, Balaam has stopped seeking God. He's not even looking for God on his journey because God's right in front of him. And the donkey says to Balaam, what have I done to you? You have struck me these 3 times. And Balaam said to the donkey, it is because you have made a mockery of me. You can see his pride, yes? If only there had been a sword in my hand, for I would have killed you by now. But the donkey said to Balaam, am I not your donkey, and which you have ridden all your life to this day? Have I ever been in the habit of doing such a thing? And he said, no. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his sword drawn in his hand, and he bowed all the way to the ground. Then the angel of the Lord said to him, why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out as an adversary, because your way was reckless and contrary to me. But the donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If she had not turned away from me, I certainly would have killed you just now and let her live. Now, this angel of the Lord, this adversary, this language, is the same language that God uses with Joshua. When he says, take off of your feet and I will go before you. This is the protector of God's people. And so you understand right now, God is saying that, Balaam, you are putting at risk something here. And he's not risking cursing the people of God. We know that. There's some other things going on here. So watch what Balaam says to the angel of the Lord. I have sinned. So now you go back to what I was saying before when I was saying, how come God says yes and then no and then yes and then no? Balaam knows the moment he went back to God and said, can you clarify that no into a yes? I have sinned, for I did not know that you were standing in the way against me. Now then, if it displeases you, I will turn back. But the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, go with the men, but you shall speak only the word that I tell you. This is the condition. So Balaam went along with the representatives of Balak. So this, brothers and sisters, this is God's permissive will. He didn't tell Balaam to go. He allowed him to go. And this is a key distinction. And we have to start asking ourselves some of these questions. Because there's a big difference between God saying we can go and God telling us to go. Can you hear me today? There's a big difference between God saying, okay, go ahead, and God saying, no, you go. Do you understand? See, Balaam acknowledges Yahweh. He acknowledges God, but his heart is not his. Even when he says, this is what it says. He says, if it displeases you, I won't go. It's not, the going doesn't displease Balaam. He wants to go. He wants to do this. That's what's in his heart. And he knows he has sinned. But God still says, because he says, I've sinned, I'll go home. But God still lets him go because he knows his heart is still not his. Listen, trust me, you're going to see this. The proof is going to be there. It's coming, all right? The proof is coming. I know you're going, that's not what it's written. But listen, I'll start by just showing you this. He's not looking for God in this moment. He's not looking for God. He needs a donkey just to point God out to him. He's clearly self-motivated, all right? His agenda is not God's agenda, and his own words, brothers and sisters, condemn him because as we read this and God says yes and no, is there a verse that comes to mind to you? Anybody here? Anything about this, anything in the Bible you can recall that just doesn't make sense because God is not a man that he should, or the son of man that he should change his mind? Yes? So when you say, hey, God said no, but I'm going to go check with him. Now, do you know where that verse is? Numbers 23. Do you know who says those words? Balaam himself. Let thy own words condemn you, sir. Numbers 23:18 says, then he, being Balaam, took up his discourse and said, arise, Balak, and hear. Listen to me, son of Zippor. God is not a man that he would lie, nor a son of man that he would change his mind. Has he said, and he will not, and will he not do it? Or has he spoken, and will he not make it good? He says to Balak the very thing he should have preached to himself. His own words condemn his actions and show that he is walking in God's permissive will, dangerously skirting the line to the point where God says, if you go outside of these boundaries, it's going to be bad for you. And he says to Balak, yo, God doesn't change his mind. And yet his example to Balak and to all of his people is that God does. And listen to this. You need to understand this. God's warnings are not just because he's concerned about his people. We've already talked about this. They're for Balaam's benefit, and he should know this. It's not this harsh demand from God. It's actually protection. Balaam, by going, is putting both himself and God's people in jeopardy. You have to understand this. By going in God's permissive will, we are kind of skirting a line that is very, very dangerous. And there's this sense in here. There's this biblical sense for me as I read this when God's like, when he's like, I've sinned, I'll go home. He doesn't really want to go home. It's that idea that what starts with the flesh must end with the flesh. God knows one way or the other, he's going. And he's trying to keep him going in a way that will keep him alive and his people okay. He needed more than this acknowledgement of his sinfulness. I just want you to see this today. Because how many times when we go back to God and he says, okay, how many times do we get this sense of we're not doing what's right? But he needed more than this sense of like being sinful or walking outside of God's perfect will. He needed a change of heart, a change of motivation, yes? He needed to go home. Back to the beginning. Balaam needed to go back to no. No. And the only way he's getting there is when his heart says, I desire God's will more than mine. So we get to Numbers 23:1. He gets back on his donkey. Donkey takes him to Balak. And this is what Balaam says to Balak in Numbers 23, verse 1. It says, build 7 altars for me here, and prepare 7 bulls and 7 rams for me here. So I want you to see this. He goes to Balak, and he basically, he runs up the budget. I mean, he really makes him put in the work. He makes him put in the sacrifice, the time, all of this stuff. And then after all of that, he goes and he seeks the Lord, and he comes back in verse 5, and he says, then the Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth and said, return to Balak, and this is what you shall speak. So we returned to him, and behold, he was standing beside his burnt offering, he and all the other leaders of Moab. And he took up his discourse and said, from Aram, Balak has brought me, Moab's king from the mountains of the east, saying, come, declare Jacob curse for me, and come curse Israel. How am I to put a curse on him, upon whom God has not put a curse? And how am I to curse him, whom the Lord has not cursed? For I see him from the top of the rocks, and I look at him from the hills. Behold, a people that lives in isolation and does not consider itself to be among the nations, who has counted the dust of Jacob, or the number of the fourth part of Israel. May I die the death of the upright, and may my end be like his. Then Balak said to Balaam, what have you done to me? I brought you here. I'm paying you. I killed 7 bulls, 7 rams, all so you could curse them. And this is what you've done to me? I took you to put... He's saying, what is he doing right now? He is dishonoring Balaam. He's taking all, like Balaam went thinking he was going to get this great thing, and now all of a sudden it's starting to look like nobody really likes Balaam anymore. I took you to put a curse on my enemies, but behold, you have actually blessed them. And Balaam replied, must I not be careful to speak what the Lord puts in my mouth? So he's articulating out loud all of the right things, right? And let's see once again. Now, he's not just heard from God. Now he's speaking on behalf of God. He's giving a good prophetic word. Hear what I'm saying here. Because these are not the markers of people we follow. You know, it says in the Bible, it says that man looks at the outward appearance and God looks at the heart. We have to start being more like God, brothers and sisters. But he prophesied all that I have ever done. Yeah, and he's a jerk. Just because someone has heard from God does not mean that they should be in charge. All right, let's just leave it there. All right, I don't know what just happened to my screen. Let's hope it, I think I got it back. Okay, now, so he says to him, okay, go back and try again. Okay? So once again, here we go. Like, here's the whole thing. God did his part, right? He says, nope, we're not cursing Israel. Balaam's like, he's not going to curse Israel. And now Balak says, okay, go back and do it again. Go try again. So he tries again. He comes back, and he curses Balak and his people again. And he says, all right, go try it again, okay? And he says, and the same thing happens. So when we get to Numbers 24, he's cursing, Balaam's cursing him over and over and over again, okay? So we get to the third time in Numbers 24, verse 10, it says, then Balak's anger burned against Balaam, and he struck his hands together. Balak said to Balaam, I have called you to curse my enemies, but behold, you have persisted in blessing them these 3 times. So I told you to curse them, and you triple blessed them. And what's happened in this moment is that Balaam at one point stops even going to God. He just opens his mouth, and it says that God takes over his words. And it makes a note that Balaam really liked it. He liked the idea of being the voice of God, right? And this is what it says. I called you to curse my enemies. Behold, you have persisted in blessing them these 3 times. So flee to your place now. I said it would honor you greatly, but behold, the Lord has held you back from honor. Okay, I want you to hear this as the enemy of God's people. Hear what he's saying. These are the tactics of the enemy. Oh, God's not letting you do what you want. God's not letting you be special. God's making you do this. Okay? And Balaam says to Balak all the right things. Publicly, it's all the right stuff. Balaam said to Balak, did I not, in fact, tell your messengers whom you have sent to me, saying, if Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I cannot do anything contrary to the command of the Lord, either good or bad, of my own accord. What the Lord speaks, I will speak. So now behold, I am going to my people. Come and I will advise you of what this people will do to your people in the days to come. Right? It kind of feels like my dad's bigger than your dad. Just started happening there for a moment. So then he blesses Israel one more time after that. And then he curses Balak and basically the entire Canaanite galaxy. He just kind of goes off on everybody. All right? Now, listen, this is the historical record. This the historian kind of saying, this is what happened, right? And he says, hey, after that, they just parted ways. They had their little spat, and they just parted ways, and Balaam went back. So at the end of this, you're like, yeah, whew, Balaam skirted to death, all right? He went and did the permissive thing. He didn't do the perfect thing. But hey, God used him, right, in that move, and God used him to speak on his behalf. And all of these things happened. And so even though it was risky, Balaam made it through, okay, and he went back home, and it's all good. Because that's what you read. But then help me understand this. Also in the historical record, Joshua 13:22, it says, and this, I'm giving you a window into how I figure things, how God moves me through things, because I'm asking questions as soon as I read this and go, Balaam seems like he probably did things 90% better than like 90% of us, right? But then I get to Joshua 13:22, and it says, the sons of Israel also killed Balaam, the son of Beor, the diviner, with a sword among the rest of the... What? So you're telling me this great prophet who hears from God, speaks on behalf of God, blesses God's people multiple times, you're telling me that when his people got to where he lived, they killed him? So I don't know about you, but that makes all the stuff go off in my head and go, what? Doesn't make sense. God changing his mind all over the place. This dude that's doing all these great things dying. What's going on? Deuteronomy 23:5. Let's try to figure it out. Nevertheless, the Lord your God was unwilling. So this is painting a slightly different angle to this thing. Nevertheless, the Lord your God was unwilling to listen to Balaam, but the Lord your God turned the curse into a blessing for you because the Lord your God loves you. There's something saying something. Balaam didn't want to do this. He wanted to do something else. Joshua 24:10. God says, but I was not willing to listen to Balaam, so he had to bless you, and I saved you from his hand. This is painting maybe some conditions of the heart, wouldn't you say? That maybe there was a bit more going on than just him trying to do what God wanted him to do. So we get to Numbers 31, verse 16. And this is the historical record. It says, behold, they caused the sons of Israel, they being the people from Moab, through the counsel of Balaam. What? Hold on. Wait. I thought he just blessed Israel and went home. I thought he did only what God told him to do. Through the counsel of Balaam to be unfaithful to the Lord in the matter of Peor, so that the plague took place among the congregation of the Lord. Whew. Okay. This is what's going on here. I just want you to see it. I don't know that Balaam went there with all of the wrong intentions. All I know is that he had to hang out with the enemy of God's people long enough. He had to hear enough times that he wasn't worth a darn. He wasn't worth all of the effort they put in to get him there. And it starts to make me think about like Samson and Delilah. God's permissive will and just getting worn down over and over and over again until you spill the tea. And it ends up hurting everybody. Not just God's people. Balaam is going to die because of it. Because he chose his will over God's will. Because he thought God saying okay was the same as God saying to go. And in Numbers 25, right after Balaam leaves, we see what happens because of his counsel. In Numbers 25, 1-5, it says, while Israel remained at Shittim, the people began to commit infidelity with the daughters of Moab. Okay, so Balaam couldn't curse them, but he found a workaround. You ever done that? Listen, I stayed in God's permissive will, because it's not perfect will. I stayed in the parameters. I found a workaround. I didn't really do anything wrong. They did the wrong thing. I just kind of told them, if you maybe, perhaps, I don't know, threw some stuff in front of them, they might curse themselves. But I don't know. I just can't say anything God doesn't tell me to say. I don't really know. But if you do it, you can probably still pay me. It says, for they invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel became followers of Baal of Peor, and the Lord was angry with Israel. And the Lord said to Moses, take all the leaders of the people and execute them in broad daylight before the Lord, so that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn away from Israel. So Moses said to the judges of Israel, each of you kill his men who have become followers of Baal of Peor. Ay, ay, ay. So, Revelation 2:14 says it this way, but I have a few things against you because you have some there who hold the teaching of Balaam, who kept teaching Balak to put a stumbling block before this. Listen, in public, but Balaam's got all the right words. In public, this is a mighty man of God. Respect the prophet. Powerful things are happening in his ministry. In private, he is fulfilling his own desires. He is motivated by his own stuff. Because how could he go back home having gone to curse Israel? Listen to me. And Israel was better off. Think about that. You don't think there's a selfish motivation in him not wanting Israel to advance to his land? You don't think there's a selfish motivation for him not wanting Israelite to have some stumble because he went? Well, I can't say nothing. But look how smart I am. It says he kept teaching Balak to put a stumbling block before the sons of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols, and to commit sexual immorality. This is what we need to understand here. Say, we can participate in God's will. We can. Or he will accomplish his will in spite of us. And I want you to see it this way because it's really important. God didn't need Balaam to bless Israel. Do you understand that? He didn't need it. I mean, he used it, but they were already blessed. They already had their future planned for them. He didn't need Balaam to do any of that. You understand? But what the enemy intended for evil, God changed for good. Listen, it's important for us to see this because we can get fooled on it. It doesn't mean that Balaam did the right thing by going. Even though he heard from God, even though he spoke for God, being in Balak's presence caused him to stumble. Remember what God said to him? Do only what I tell you. He did more. And I don't know a human being that is strong enough to walk in God's permissive will long enough to not find a way to stumble. You see, sometimes, I didn't even plan on talking about this. I don't know why I'm going to say it. Listen, here's the deal. If Balaam stays home, he doesn't even have to figure out how to do what God says. Do you understand what I'm saying? How many times that we're walking in our own self-motivated, God's permissive will way, and we can't figure out how to only do what he tells them. Now, if I would have just stayed home, I wouldn't have to try to figure that out. Do you understand? Sometimes the key to not sinning is not going where the sinning happens. Stay home. Or for some of you men, go to bed. I sat in front of it. Go to bed. See, we can learn some things here. The enemy is always looking to curse God's people, by the way. Understand that? Now, he can't, but he often uses the people who would say that would reflect a certain godliness. He uses self-motivated people and their gifts to tear up God's people. Let me give you an example. And I don't want to preach all day, so I'm going to get going here. I know a man. And I know what's God's perfect will for him because he knows what God's perfect will is for him as well. That was for him to be an evangelist, to travel around countries, preach the gospel, never be in one place too long. That was God's perfect will for him. And he's gifted. He's a gifted speaker and preacher and evangelist, and he's charismatic, and he is all the things you would want in someone to lead your mega church. And that's what he wanted. He wanted to prove everybody wrong that said he couldn't do it in another country. He wanted to be in North America. He wanted to pastor a big church. He wanted to be known. He wanted those things. And so he kept demanding, and God gave him what he wanted. He allowed him to walk in his permissive will. And mighty things have happened, and big things have happened, and a church has grown. But I can tell you in every one of my conversations, what's happening with him is he keeps talking about things like, how do we keep people? How do we get people? And everyone is so enamored by Balaam that even when God has put donkeys in his way, either he or those around him have moved those donkeys, and he just kept on going. See, a prophet who cares more for their own than for God will never be safe. They will always compromise to obtain their own glory. So ask yourself, when you're talking to people who you think you should follow, what are their conversations about really? When you talk to them outside of the pulpit, outside of the laying on of hands, when you're around them, what are the things that are really talked about? Church growth? All the mighty things they've done? Real estate? You hear what I'm saying, yes? Because godliness can be a means for much gain. They keep talking about followers. What are they asking from their viewership, right? What are they receiving? What do they truly care about? People or person? 2 Peter says this. It says, abandoning the right way, they have gone astray, having followed the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the reward of unrighteousness. But he received a rebuke for his own offense, for a mute donkey speaking with a human voice restrained the insanity of the prophet. Now he says, these people like Balaam, these people who can speak for God and have spoken for God, but are walking in his permissive will and not his perfect will. These are springs without water and mists driven by a storm, for whom the black darkness has been reserved. Whew. For while speaking out arrogant words of no value, they entice by fleshly desires, by indecent behavior, those who barely escape from the ones who live in error. The public and personal lives of the people that you are around matter. God's gifting is never, ever a license for the things that we have given people passes for. Promising them freedom while they themselves are slaves of corruption. For by what anyone is overcome, by this he is enslaved. For if after this is the truth, man. You go to any organization, any church, any ministry that's led by somebody who is personally motivated and has certain things that they have been overcome by and they have been imprisoned by, guess what? You're going to see what they are doing throughout their entire leadership. That's what this says. For if after they have escaped the defilements of the world by the knowledge of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, they are again entangled in them and are overcome, if after they say no they make God say yes, the last state has become worse for them than the first. And brothers and sisters, the same can be said for each of us. I want you to stop for a moment and think about if God has told you something. Has God told you something and your desires have changed his mind? You hear what I'm saying? But God, I don't want. How about, I want out of this relationship. God, you might have said stay, but I want out. I want out, God. I want out. I want out. I want out. I want. Fine. Fine. I want out of this job. This house. This church. God, I want more degrees. I want more money. God, I want more love. God, I want more love. God, I want more love. God. I know you said that you're enough, but I want more. Has God's first word been enough? How many times have you gone back to ask about alcohol and music and video games and movies and entertainment? How many times? And it's not the same for each of us. Because God knows what entraps us. How many times do you go back and say, no, give me another word to the one who does not lie or change his mind, and then convince yourself he's okay with it because he finally got sick of listening to you, not listen to him. What have you given your heart and your mind to? What fears have driven you back to asking for your own answer? Go home. Balaam, go home. Go home. Go back to no. Go home. I think it could be a mindset. It could just be a mindset. You know what God's asking is unfair. He's asking what's unfair. You know, others get to do these things. I do. It's unfair. It could just be that over and over and over again, questioning God's goodness and his sovereignty. I'm not appreciated. I'm not appreciated. I mean, it could be a decision. Like, divorce is the only option. Divorce is the only. It could be a decision. It could be an action. You know, cannabis isn't illegal in Canada. It shouldn't be illegal for me unless God said no. Balaam, go home. And don't be fooled by God using you, by others seeing God in you in the places you weren't supposed to go. Don't be confused by the effectiveness of your double-minded life. Because the only reason it's effective is God's grace for other people while you run out of it for yourself. Balaam, go home. I'm your donkey. Go home. Go home. You're not dead yet, Balaam. Go home. In Luke 15, with his face in slop, the most famous permissive will person of all time, the prodigal son, in Luke 15, verse 7, he says, but when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired laborers have more than enough bread? But I'm dying here from hunger. And brothers and sisters, ain't nobody here dying from hunger. But some of us are at our end. Emotionally, mentally. We can't get going anymore. And we keep convincing ourselves that God's cool with us taking the money and running. And today, I'm here to tell you, in my most donkey voice available, go home. Come to your senses. Go home. He says, I will set out and go to my father and will say to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired laborers. I don't want this anymore. So he set out and came to his father. But when he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion for him and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But this is what God says to us today, if we will come to our senses. If we will go home. He says to us, his people, go, bring out the best robe, put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and bring the fattened calf, slaughter it, and let's eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead, walking away, and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found, and they began to celebrate. What does that mean? What does that look like? Revelation 2. I'm coming to a close right here. Jesus says, I know your deeds and your labor and your perseverance, and that you cannot tolerate evil people. Because, man, we're good, right? Like, you've put to test those who call themselves apostles to the test, and they are not, and you have found them to be false. And you have perseverance and have endured and account of mine. We look good, man. We look good on paper. We've got stories to regale you of what God has done in our lives and in the lives of others. We are clearly pointing out all of the Balaams left, right, and center. But I have this against you. You have left your first love. Go home. Therefore, remember from where you have fallen and repent. And do the deeds you did at first. When God said no, do you remember what he said no to? What have you convinced yourself that he says yes to now? And I'm not talking about, there's some things God has us do in and out of season, but there are some things that God says that is not for you. And sometimes that doesn't feel so good. Like when he said to me, Josh, you're never going to have a lot of money. I think I could figure out, I'm smart enough to figure out how to get some money. Do the deeds you did at first, and sometimes that means don't do the deeds you do now. Or else I am coming to you like I came to Balaam, and I will take you out. Because you are putting yourself and everyone I love at risk. Every step you take in my permissive will. Go home. Balaam, go